What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over how to make our animations and blend spaces actually different based on the weapons or equipment we have. So we had already kind of done this with attacks. So without a weapon, we do a standard punch. Say we equip a weapon, we can do a sword slash as opposed to it, with different speeds and damage rates and everything. With an axe, we do even different attacks. And with a dagger, we do one final attack with an incredibly slow rate of speed here. But you can see that we had the attacks working for each of the different weapons, and we were able to actually use them to make our game a little bit different with each weapon. However, what we can also do is change our animations based on the equipment we have for everything. For our walks, for our blend spaces. You could do it for jumping, rolling, or other things like that as well. For us, we're just going to be focusing on the standard procedures here. So what we have right now, we have our standard walk blend space, where we can walk forward, backward, left and right, or in this case, we can turn to the direction we're moving. Then what we have is I now have added a sprinting animation. Once you're going above a certain speed, it's added to the blend space. Okay, and now let's equip our sword here. And now we can walk, and you see our stance is different. This is actually a sword and shield stance, which we don't have a shield at the moment, but you see the point. It's a different animation than what we had before for idle and for walking. Same with left and right, actually. And then we can sprint, and he also sprints differently. Okay, you can unequip the sword and equip the axe. Now for the same effect. The idle is actually pretty much the same as the standard idle. Technically has a different play rate because I've modified it so that they were different, but since I'm using Mixamo animations, I have a limited amount to choose from. But then I have a different walking animation for all these. You can tell it's not the same. And then I also have a different run animation. Lastly, we can go and equip our dagger right here. You can see that the idle is way different on this one. Our walking is also different. Now this one's a little funny because this one does not fit at all with the speed or anything. But you can see it's just a different animation that I picked. Obviously you can increase the rate or just change the animations. But then I also have a running with the dagger, which is different than the other runs as well. So basically all your weapons, and again, all your equipment, if you wanted the equipment to change the animation for any reason, can change how our character exists within the world and how they do certain actions. This is insanely important, as different weapons will have different stances. Even though these are basic Mixamo animations, if you're thinking about using a one-handed weapon versus a two-handed weapon, right off the bat, without even clarifying what weapons they're going to be, they're going to have different animations just because the character should not hold them the same. So it's not just the attacks like we've covered before, but also just the entire way that the character works and moves. Today's actually going to be a pretty simple episode. It's all going to be done in the blueprint. We're not going to have to change anything with the code. But before we get started, if you'd like to catch up on the series, I believe this is episode 28. So you can check out everything we've done to this point and see how we've gotten to where we are now. We still have a long, long way to go, and I've got a list of everything we're going to cover here in the description. You can check it out if you're interested. Otherwise, let's get started. So I'm going to go to my character's animation blueprint and the character themselves, actually. So we have our anim BP, and then we have our base character BP. We don't have to change anything in our base character BP today, but I did want to disable something so that you can see the two different methods in this case. So previously in the series, I was showing you some things with blend spaces, and I recommended that you could use controller rotation yaw, which is where you will automatically face the given direction that you are facing, and they will continue to look that way. This is when you get these left and right animations. You didn't see this before when I was walking around because the character was always going to face the camera. Now my blend spaces are a little bit messed up because of all the speeds I've done, and I haven't really messed with this. But you can see that they move different ways, and you have different animations based on what I have equipped. So if I were to equip a sword right now and walk left and right, I have different animations than I would with my no weapon. So this is what your character may look like. This is good for lock-on. We are going to use this sort of functionality for lock-on. It's far from finished. This is a simple boolean that we checked in the character, but we can use that sort of behavior to lock on to opponents. That's what I was trying to show before. For now, I'm disabling this because I'm thinking more of how a lot of open world games do it, where whatever direction you're running is the direction the character is facing. So if I have my camera facing this way, but I'm running toward the camera, then I'm still going to be running toward the camera. That's intended. So that's the reason I've done this. So make sure that in your base character blueprint, under pawn, use controller rotation yaw is off for now, as that'll be our standard method of moving when we're not locked onto things or locked into cutscenes and things like that. Alright, once you're back to that state, then we can go into our NMBP and focus on the new stuff today. So first things first, I've removed the run state. We had a run state because we had an idle move blend space and no way to sprint or actually go to a different state. I've just gone ahead and added that to our blend space as well. One of the beautiful things about blend spaces is that you can change the speeds and the directions that the character has to be moving to trigger certain states, so you can blend between walking and running. Now, since my animations are mixed mode animations, a lot of them don't blend perfectly. Some of them are jittery and actually from different sets, different animation sets. So, when doing that, if this is the case for you too, you may see that you might actually want to have a blend space for, say, idle and move, but running is a different one because the animations don't blend that well. That's perfectly fine as well. If you'd like to do that, no problems there. However, I was satisfied with what we had, so I've left it alone. So what I've done is I've taken out the run state, and then in idle and move, we've changed up the logic a little bit here. So this is very similar to how we have our attack states. If I show you what we've done in the past, we had different states for attacks. And what we did is we checked if the current weapon type was a specific type, and if the character was attacking, then we would go to that specific attack animation. Now that works, and that method's fine, but you can see how many states it adds to your state machine. So I'm showing you another method today. What you can do instead of splitting it up is do this thing called blend poses based on a value. And so we're going to blend poses based on Enum. We're going to have one state, idle move, and we're going to be able to switch all these animations based on that. You can do this for your attacks as well. Once you see this, it's going to be basically the exact same strat, just you probably won't be using blend spaces, but rather specific animation files, since we have specific animations for each attack and not blend spaces for each attack. But how you want to do it is up to you. It won't really hurt anything either way. These are both here to make our lives more convenient. So you won't have these yet because you probably didn't make them unless you went off on your own and made them, which is of course perfectly fine. But I'm going to show you how to make them now, so don't worry about that. So we are going to go into our initial blend space that we made. We made a blend space for our character's movement before we changed any logic based on the equipment that they had. So we're going to go to that to start. Now that is right here. I have 4 folders, and these are where animations reside in each of these folders. So default is if there is no weapon or equipment that is going to change an animation, then sword animations, dagger animations, and axe animations. The default one has a few extra for me just because I wasn't sure where I wanted to use certain animations, but don't worry about that now. The important part is that we're navigating to our movement blend space, and I'm going to show you what it looks like now. If you follow the series, your blend space will be very similar, where you have, different directions and speeds do different things. So walk left, walk right, walk backward. These are going to be all idle because they're 0 speed. Walk backward this way too. And then we have the walk forward with these different speeds. So the left and right are the same, but I have 3 different speeds you see here now. So technically, I actually have the walking speed at a value way too high. So my walking speed before was at this middle area, but you can see I now have new nodes in here. I now have new animations we can use. This is because I've changed the maximum axis value here. I've changed it from 600, which is the character's base walk speed. Let me show you that real quick, just as a reminder. In your character, your base character BP, your character movement, or if you change it in code, there will be a max walk speed variable here. So this right here will allow you to change how fast the character will move based on Unreal's system for character movement. We actually changed that in the code when sprinting. Right here, we just changed the max walk speed to 1500. This was an arbitrary value. It's actually too high for a real game, most likely. I think it's too fast. But really the point is that we just sped up the character so you could see it. This is one of the first things we did in our series. Now, we can make this a lot better, but don't worry about that for now. Basically, all we care about is that this value is changing so we can tell the difference between walking and running. So what I'd recommend is when you have the values that you know for walking, running, those different things, then you set these maximum axis values to the appropriate values. So for example, our maximum axis value is 900. You make it 1500 if you want. Every time you change it, these values that are required for each of these update as well. So the speed has to be higher. So 1500 is going to be the sprinting state. And yes, I've added sprinting. We did not have it before. This is how you can do it. As you make this bigger, like I said, you can get more slots in here where you can put axis values, or where you can put these animations in. So I have an animation that I called Assassin Sprinting. Should be Assassin Sprint, that's what it is. And so when I look at it, it's literally just this. Okay? And so in my, if I go back to the blend space, you can see that that's the animation I've brought onto this blend space at the top, at the maximum speed when running directly ahead. Of course, these do blend together, so you can kind of sprint different directions, which is why you get this weird effect here, where it'll kind of, you know, start running and then stop. Again, that's an issue with states that are blending, not really blending well together, and that's because this is a walking state to the left or right, and this is a sprinting state. You can either have a sprinting to the left and right, or you can limit the direction that the character can sprint, which is the way we're going to do it in the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my values now so this makes sense. So I think 375 is a base speed. Doesn't really matter just as long as it's below your normal walking speed, which is 600. So I'm going to put it there. And then I have this run, which is different. So this is walk. This is if I'm less than, if I'm 350 or so. And then, actually this is 400, I believe. 375, that's it. And then this state right here is my little jog. So I can put that 750 if I want. But that means that my character is not going to exactly look like that. He'll look more like this, because this is what 600 is. So it's going to be a very slow jog. And then we can run really fast at this one. You can change the number of grid divisions to make this a little bit better for you. So if you make it 8, then you can change where you want these to be. So if I want my walking can probably stay, but then I want my jogging at 600. Walking is really only going to be applicable on a controller with an axis value. With the keyboard, I won't really be able to achieve it. So I'll go straight to my jogging, and then this will be my running. Now when we look at this one more time, you can see I've changed the values, and the blend space actually looks a lot better because of that change. I have no wind down time, so it snaps back when I'm done sprinting. That's something we can fix. But you can see how it looks actually very natural. He takes a step or two walking, and then it goes into the slow jog, and then he goes into the sprint, and it actually looks pretty nice. Once you're happy with this and your basic setup, what you can do is duplicate this movement blend space and use it for your other weapons and just replace the animations. If I go back into where my animations were, you can either copy it and move it to a different folder like I did. So you can click on it, Control C, or right click and copy, and then paste it in the correct area. You can also just duplicate it in that folder like I said, right click and duplicate, and you'll have an exact copy here. Either way, I have one for each. So if I go into my sword, I've renamed it to assassin sword movement blend space. But this is the same, minus the grid division, since I just made that change on the other one. And so now all I do is I go through my blend samples here, or if you want, you could actually click on each of these individual states and replace them with animations. But I just lined up what my animations were and switched them out for the appropriate equipment. So if this is my sword, if this was idle before, like this would have been assassin idle. Well, I know that this is the sword blend space, so I want to use the sword idle. Same with walk forward, walk right, walk left, walk back, and sprint. Okay. And I am going to make the same change that we just made. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this guy back, not this guy. I'm going to move this guy back to like 350 or whatever. It's normally at 337.5. And then we can move this guy back as well. So we can put him at 600 or so, 562. That's fine. And this guy, actually, that's what we need to do. We need to update the axis value. And then we can change where these guys are at. So we can put him at 375. Our other blend space puts the this guy right here, 562. And then that can stay at 1500 if we want. So we have a walking state for controller. This will be our standard keyboard like jog if we have that. And then we have our run. So now let's try out our blend space with the sword. And you can see now it looks a lot better. There was a lot more jitter before. And now there's seriously none. It looks pretty much perfect, especially for it just being a Mixmo animation and not necessarily a blended animation, just the standard Unreal blend. So now we have a nice sword animation. Again, the left and right will work with it as well when we're in locked on mode, so it is important that if you want those animations, that you do include them now, even if you won't be able to see them when standard walk cycles are occurring. Now, I don't probably have to explain it as much for these two, but we will go into them real quick. So the dagger is another one I have, so I'll probably want to do the same thing since I end up liking these results. So I change my axis and grid divisions, and then I just look at what I want. I know I like 375 as the walk, and then we'll say 600 or 562 as this walk. You can see it's actually going to be a little bit faster now because my character will be walking about that fast, so that'll probably look better. We can keep the sprint at 1500. And now if we go equip the dagger and add it to our inventory, you can see the walking actually looks much better now. The dagger idle does have a bit of a blend period because the animation itself is different. So you can see it doesn't look quite as nice as some of the other ones. However, the actual blend looks better, the walk cycle looks better now, and the walk to the run looks better too. So you can see how a minor improvement to these blend spaces can make the character look so much better. Our last case is the axe, and since we've already come this far, why not? So change that axis value and those number of grid divisions. We'll do the same thing we always do. I move my standard walk here. This would be essentially my jog. I'm actually using the sword in this case as my walk forward, just because I never had another walk forward for the axe specifically, and I thought it looked fine, but really all these should be unique to make it look nicer. I do have an axe sprint though, right here at the bottom. So that will look different, and now these values are set up as we want. So one more time, let's click over here. We get our basic axe. And then we have our walk. Now it looks a lot better. I know it's the sword animation, but the blend looks good. And then it goes into the run perfectly fine. So now we have honestly nice looking animations, and we can even have left and right and backward animations as well for all of our different equipment to give our game a proper feeling when we equip different items. All right, to wrap up our logic here, what we need to do is go back into the state we were in, and we're going to need to set up these blend pose by basically this Enum value, our weapon type that we have. We already set this up in a previous episode, but what we essentially have to do here is we have to search for the specific blend space that we want to add to the state here. And then what we'll do is we'll pick each one, add them using the character direction and speed like I did for the initial movement blend space. We can do this for all of them since it is the same direction and the same speed for all of them. And then we're going to need to find our blend pose by Enum. So all we do is search for it here, and you can search for the specific type that you want. So I actually type in my Enum value here, which is weapon type. All we need to do at this point is right click on this node, this blend pose node, and we're going to pick all the values that we want to fill out. So in our case, I don't need to pick the actual default value because there is a default on the node already, but we do want all of the individual other weapon stances, so the sword, dagger, and axe. Now we are going to go over dual wielding in the near future, and that will of course just be, there will be other logic in relation to the attacks and the weapons that are being used. However, as far as the actual movement goes, it's just going to be another blend space based on the different types of dual wielding we can do. A different stance will be taken. And so that's all it's going to be. So this technique is really useful for a ton of different things, and it's going to allow us to actually use whatever equipment we want in the future. Now, in the next episode, we're going to be fixing up our inventory, probably for the final time for a bit, because what we're going to be able to do after that is pick up items, and the items are going to have a notification to say whether they are equipped or not. So we're not going to have this strangeness when we open up a new inventory panel to see if it's equipped or not. We're going to be able to determine what is equipped and what isn't, and we'll be able to just spawn it into our character's hands. The last episode that we did, the class references and versus object references, is going to be super important for that episode, and that's going to be the next episode in the series. So I'd highly recommend you brush up on that and get ready for the next episode where we talk about all that cool stuff with the inventory. I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed and I helped you with your different movement states and blend spaces, then please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else, and I really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters and subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support. Very, very helpful to me, more than you know, and I really, really am grateful for it. So thank you so much for helping me continue these series. If you have any issues with this tutorial or any of the tutorials that I have, feel free to reach out on Discord. There's a link in the description. I'll be happy to help you out and get you situated for free. Anyway, like I said, I'm Shawnthebro. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.